I aspire to be a badass Latina. Um,
Yeah.
yes, young Latina who wants to inspire other Latinas to just be bold, be themselves, be confident, speak up, find your voice, use it, and just be
Hmm.
that badass that's killing it at whatever it is you want to kill.
Yeah.
Your personal life, your professional life.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Latina Leadership Series. My name is Angelica Casares, and I am your host. On today's episode, I have the ever beautiful Melissa Vela. Melissa, ¿cómo estás?
I'm good. How are
You're
you?
doing well, Melissa. So I keep up with you. We're like Facebook friends, and we've been friends like online for quite some time. So I keep up with all your updates. Mujer, you're like going to school, small
Uh,
child, and you're advancing in your career. Congratulations on baby. Congratulations on like doing like the hard work on like, and it's impressive. It's really, really impressive.
Thank you, girl. I'm not gonna lie, it feels like hard work. It feels like I've been doing it forever, but then there's small little moments where it's like you see the benefits that
Yeah.
you're taking, and so it makes it all worthwhile. So thank you for acknowledging all that.
Well, absolutely. I hope baby's doing well and you're also doing well. But on today's episode, I brought you on, Melissa, and I've been trying to get you on for quite some time, and we've been going back and forth. And finally, the stars aligned, and I have you on here. So, as every interviewee, as every conversation intro to this, I always want you to introduce yourself to the listeners. And usually, the questions are simple: Who are you? Where you come from? And what do you do?
Wow. I mean, they sound simple, but it's like, where do you begin? I don't even know if I prepped for this. I didn't. So,
It's
but
okay.
who am I? Well,
Uh-huh.
I am Melissa Vela. I'm a native Houstonian. I was born and raised here in Houston. My parents are from the northern part of Mexico, and they came to Houston in the late '80s.
Hmm.
So I love my parents to death. We're very close. My dad comes and sees my girls every day after work. My mom's my best friend, and I have one sister. So I'm the oldest child,
Uh-huh.
and I'm also the oldest grandchild of the
Hmm.
family. So I feel like I'm a natural leader, like
Uh-huh.
paving the way. And I'm also somebody who is very goal oriented.
Hmm.
I don't know if you believe in uh, zodiac signs and all that, but I'm a Capricorn, so
Okay.
birthday's in January. Um, I grew up here in Pasadena, Texas. I still live in Pasadena. I am a mom of
Uh-huh.
3 kids now. I can't even believe that. I have been a girl mom, and it's been all about the girl squad for the past 10 years.
Hmm.
But now I have a little boy, and he's about to be a month old next week. So it's been very different. So
Yeah.
I'm a mom. I'm also a wife. My husband has been my best friend since middle school. I didn't like him. We didn't like each other back then. I thought he was just my ugly best friend. But years later, fell in love. And I know he's gonna see this. He's gonna be like, "Wow, really?" But yeah, years later, I think I was in college. We started dating, and so I
Hmm.
dated, and we dated for about 4 years. Got married. I think we're gonna celebrate our 11th uh,
Hmm.
wedding anniversary at the end of this year. So
Congratulations.
thank you. And then I aspire to be a badass Latina. Um,
Yeah.
yes, young Latina who wants to inspire other Latinas to just be bold, be themselves, be confident, speak up, find your voice, use it, and just be
Hmm.
that badass that's killing it at whatever it is you want to kill.
Yeah.
Your personal life, your professional life. Um, and I just hope to inspire confidence and other
I think
Latinas.
you are. I think you are. And Melissa, I like the fact that you know you are. You know you are. And I think that's sometimes that's what drives us to continue because we know we have like not that we have eyes on us, not that we're trying to prove anything, but because something for us, Melissa, we come from the same kind of sort of neighborhoods. You're in Pasadena. Pasadena is like all of like 2 blocks away from Houston, Texas. Like it's not very far, you know. And
Yeah.
we come from the same upbringing around the same areas, and I feel like it's the position that you're in. So, Melissa, what do
Oh,
you work for Chase, and what do you do for Chase?
I didn't even talk about that part. Yeah, so I feel like I have my dream job now. I am a vice president at JP Morgan Chase. My title is Houston Community Manager. And what that does is it's really a bridge between what the community needs and what
Mhm,
JP Morgan Chase can offer.
mhm,
But very specific is that I'm helping Black and Hispanic communities.
mhm.
JP Morgan Chase announced a racial equity commitment
Yeah, they
in
did.
2020, and they hired on 150 community managers across the nation. I happen to be one of four in Houston. I have a team, and our job is just to start building that relationship out in the community because Chase hadn't done that in quite some time.
Mhm,
So it's all about teaching financial literacy, providing tools and resources, mentorship to these underserved, underbanked communities. And it
mhm.
just hits home because that's my community, that's my people, right?
Yeah.
And so I know so many people, even my own family members, where it's like it's almost taboo to talk about money, financial health, financial planning. We don't want to talk about it. And so it's like changing the narrative now. How do
Mhm.
we break these cycles and how do we make the community better and uplift ourselves and get ourselves into better positions? So
Yeah.
that's the work that I do here at Chase in Houston.
So as the transition, right? So earlier I said that we do get a lot of like, so you're from the community and you're helping the community. You're not coming. Sometimes I get that they bring in like other people, other folks from other areas into Houston uh, to try to help or to try to be part of that community,
Right.
community managers basically.
Yeah.
And sometimes they miss the mark a lot because they're not from the area. They don't know how we move, how we navigate, how we help each other in such a massive way. And we see that every time when the hurricanes come through, we see how we like get together, we pile together to make things happen and to keep Houston kind of moving and sort of going along. And so the fact that Chase was like, there's an opportunity to hire a Latina who's brilliant, who's doing her job, who's doing the things that she needs to do, and she's already involved the community, it just makes sense, right? So as I was saying earlier, we get, people pay attention. People pay attention to the things you do. And sometimes not wanting to know that they're paying attention, we do the things and like, okay, I feel like I'm doing okay for my community. Do you feel like that?
I absolutely do. And it's very you mentioned earlier that it's very important to find somebody that's from the community that knows the community so that we could do the work, right? And that's so important. I feel like in this role, I feel like I'm constantly advocating for what
Mhm.
Houston needs, for what our communities need, because I'm born and raised here. I know the areas, I know the organizations, the needs. And so when I bring things to Chase, they're like, oh, well, we've never heard of this, or oh, well, we didn't realize there was an opportunity there. And so I have to constantly make the case. And I feel like I'm constantly advocating for what my community needs. And that has been the biggest growth opportunity for me, is to be confident in using my voice and making my case to JP Morgan Chase
Yeah.
and saying, hey, Houston needs this, and then them listening and following through. And
Yeah.
that is so amazing and empowering to see. So you see me now and you hear what I'm doing, but I wasn't always this confident and secure and like know what I'm doing. Like it's definitely taken time and growth
Mhm.
to get here, but I do feel like I am advocating for my community. And the work never stops, girl. There's always something.
You're leaving Chase in a really good place there. You're gonna when you move up, because it's obvious you're moving up. When you move up, those are gonna be hard shoes to fill. You know what I'm saying? And the fact that you're like setting up other Latinas or other like underserved community people in our communities, setting them up for success also matters. It
Yeah.
matters. It matters what you do in that position, whether people agree the with like the banks or not. Like it matters because they are part of our community uses those banks. And so we have to pay attention to what they're doing. We have to pay attention to how they're giving back to the community that the community is giving to them. And the fact that you bring on like financial literacy, and I've heard you talk, about financial literacy in other places, and you do a really good job of it. So, can you give me just kind of sort of like when you talk about financial literacy, what do you think is one part of that big piece that you talk about that maybe you want to share that the Latino community needs to know, that you're like, hey, you know what? When I talk about this, I always get questions asked afterwards. They always raise their hand. They're like, hey, well, what about that? Can you? Yeah.
I think that our community as a whole doesn't feel comfortable or doesn't know what to ask or where to
Mhm.
start. Like, we don't have those examples. Like, who do we turn to? Who have we seen in our previous generations that have owned businesses and that have been successful and have passed things down to generations, right? So that's not always the case in our community. And so I usually talk about basic financial education, whether it's budgeting and savings, your credit score, how to improve it, how to maintain it, how to get it established. Um,
How
and
to use it, because we
yeah,
don't know how to use it, man. We don't know how to use credit, especially when we're entrepreneurs.
investing. And it's like, no matter what level you're at, whether you're starting off brand new or you're a pro at this, everybody has to have their numbers down. And
Mhm.
what does that mean? You need to have a budget. You need to know the money that's coming into your bank account. How much is that? What's your income? You need to know your budget. Are you
It's
overspending?
hard. It's hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard because we don't like to talk about it, or
No, we don't.
we haven't talked about it in our families. So it's hard to start doing it yourself and then much less bring your children into it. Like, what are we going to teach our children, right? So no matter where you are, no matter what community or what your income is, your title is, you have to know your numbers. Your
Mhm.
income, how much you're saving, what's your budget. And that those three questions is what everybody's like, I don't know. Because we don't want to put in the work to just sit down and be real with ourselves. And it's like, this is where I'm at right now. That's
Mhm.
scary. And there's a lot of people who would rather put that on the back burner and not look at their debt. They don't even want to start looking at all the balances that they owe on credit cards. But believe it or not, across the nation, most people in the United States have an average of like $30,000 in debt, and we don't have enough money in our savings account. And so, even though it sounds basic, that is what I would say to my community:
Mhm.
know your numbers. How much money
Okay.
are you bringing in? How much are you saving? What's your budget? And these numbers, you have to constantly check on them every month. And the reason why I say that is because there's so many things changing right now in the
Mhm.
economy, whether it's inflation, gas
Mm.
prices going up and down, food prices going up and down. It's like what your budget was last month might not
Uh-huh.
be the same numbers in 2 months, right? So
Yeah.
constantly check your numbers and especially your credit score. And when I teach financial education, I always say this. I'm like, we always hear cash is king, but unless you come from a lot of money where you have cash to buy whatever it is you wish, your home,
Mhm.
your car, your business, you need good credit. And so you need to know your credit score, and you need to know that credit is a game and you need to learn how to play it so that you can maximize your points in each category. And girl, I can talk about this forever. But no, you
I like that. I
no,
like that. It makes sense. Like you don't want to be left with like a bad car that you can't even buy a car because you don't have good credit. But then you're like Lamone is ain't working and ain't trying to travel down the street, and that already creates struggles. And it starts if you're on a budget, like it starts to pull your numbers. It starts to like fluctuate, right? You $1,000 this month, 500 next time to whatever happened to it, and not to be able to afford something and not be able to get it because you don't have the credit, right? And
yeah,
you're trying to save the money, but you can't save the money because your liability is actually a liability, like your car that you need to get around in to get to. But yeah, so it makes sense in my mind. It makes sense, but it's so hard.
yeah, it is. And know
Financial literacy is difficult.
it is. And know that once you start getting a grasp of what your numbers are, where you fall, then I encourage everybody to talk to your financial professional that's sitting inside a branch of your
Mhm.
bank or your credit union, wherever you have your relationship. Go in there and talk to someone because they're professionals trained and skilled in this area. And if you say, hey, I'd like to improve my credit, or I'd like to start saving more, I want to pay off my debt, whatever your goal is, they can provide suggestions and come up with a plan with you. The thing about it though is that the newer generations, it's like we don't want to go inside the branches. We don't want to talk to anybody. We'd rather do something on an app or in a
Mhm.
chat. But there are professionals that are there to help you. And so take advantage of those people sitting inside those branches and establish a relationship with them. They
Mhm.
can be your person that holds you accountable to make your goals happen. And so if you don't have anybody in your family to turn to or ask these questions, there's a financial representative sitting inside a bank or a credit union that can help you. So take advantage of those people, is what I would.
Nice, nice. Okay, let's take it back a little bit. And we brushed over very briefly about your like your upbringing and your childhood.
Uh-huh.
You're doing amazing work with an amazing institute. So, how did you get there? You're in Pasadena. You went to high school in Pasadena, right?
I did.
Pasadena. Okay.
I went to Dobie High School.
So how did you progress? How did you end up in the world of banking?
That's a great question. So during in high school, I was actually on the drill team,
Okay.
and I loved that. I loved being at the games and the fields, dancing, all that. But I knew I wasn't going to be a professional drill team or cheerleader. I wasn't going to be a professional dancer. I knew that. And like I said, I'm a Capricorn and I'm very goal oriented. I'm a realist. And so I knew that wasn't going to be my career. And in my homeroom was a co op teacher. And that co op teacher said, hey, there's an internship to be a teller at a bank. Back then it was Washington Mutual, no longer exists. It became Chase. But my homeroom teacher said, hey, there's an internship. You should apply and see if you get hired. And so I think it was because of my homeroom teacher that gave me that little nudge, like, hey, you can do this. And I applied for that internship, and that's what kicked off my banking career. I was a teller my junior and senior year at Washington Mutual for 3 hours a day. And that's where I started learning everything about banking. And I think what also helped me make that decision was that my mom was a banker as well.
Oh.
She had been at Wells Fargo for I think 15 years. She was there. She inspired me because every day after work she would come home and tell my sister, my dad, and I how how much she could help people with no papers,
Mhm.
people who couldn't speak English, people who um, came from nothing and built up something amazing for themselves. And so hearing her success stories of how she helped clients every day motivated me. I was amazed by her. So my mom had a big part to do with it too. But then my homeroom teacher is the one who nudged me and said, hey, you should do this. So that's how I got into banking. And I just kind of moved around to banks and different credit unions and different positions within the banks till I got here. I actually got recruited to come to JP Morgan Chase because I had been so involved in the community at my previous roles. So that's how it all got started.
So what would you tell young Latinas? Like, or if you could just tell something to young Melissa or to young like Latinas who are looking to step into that like that corporate space, what would you tell them? What advice would you give them?
I was always one to be, I didn't know how to ask for help.
Mhm.
And I didn't know how to like vocalize what I wanted back then, like when I was in high school. I thought I was too cool. This is never going to be for me, or they're never going to pick me. I'm not going to do this. And so, what I would suggest to young Melissa or to any other young Latina is start thinking about what it is you want. And then start identifying who around you might have some experience in those areas
Mhm.
and talk to them. Ask for help and say, hey, I would like to move into this space. sometime in the future? What advice could you give me?
Mhm,
I wish if I would have done those things at a younger age, I think I would have propelled much faster
mhm,
in my career or even in my professional life. But because we're so shy and embarrassed and we don't want to seem dumb or bother anybody, we stay quiet. And so we just take what we get. And that's where I want to start changing the narrative. It's like we need to be empowered to find out what it is we want
mhm,
and then start seeing who around us can help introduce us to something, invite us so that we could see what things are like. And then that way you make a decision, and hopefully, success never comes by yourself. It's people helping you and introducing you or giving you a chance. So the sooner you pick that up, I think the faster you will find success.
I like that answer a lot. It's very difficult to try to ask for any form of help, especially in a community like ours when we are told to put your head down, humble yourself, and when your opportunity comes, somebody's going to pick you up out of line. Basically, like the harder you work, somebody is going to pay attention as opposed to advocating for yourself and putting yourself in the spotlight and being like, "Hey, I think I can do that. Hey, I think I'm capable of that." To be
Yeah.
able to do something like that. I like that. That's an amazing answer, Melissa. I think yeah, definitely. But so how do you advocate for other young Latinas? What how do you feel you do that?
Well, as I was growing up and getting into these positions, and right now my job is all about diversity,
Mhm,
equity, and inclusion, right? But it wasn't always that case in the corporate world in America, right? Right now, that is very um, something that all corporate America is starting to dabble into, right? But it didn't always used to be that way. So as I was growing up, I always found myself being the youngest one,
mhm,
being the only Latina, being in a room full of white old men. And I got to hear and see some things.
uh-huh,
And so now that I'm in my position, I'm like, okay, I want to help other Latinas so that they don't go through what I've gone through and so that they can make it to success faster. So I like to get involved in organizations that help Latinas, and there's so many. There's so many good ones here in Houston, but just a few organizations that I feel are doing the work and I try to align myself with is Power on Heels, Latinas Women's Initiative, which is where I think I met you,
yeah.
Angelica. And this is another story that we could tell.
I like it. We should probably tell it. That's where we met. Where I remember it was my first time ever being there. I knew nobody. Like I stepped into the world and I was like, this is a whole new group of Latinas that I was very unaware with. I have the whereabouts for like everybody else, right? In the other places, I don't. So we were at a it was up on like a rooftop. It was something and we were so I stood there and I was like, I don't know anybody. And I was like, I'm gonna go home. And I was like, no, I'm not going anywhere. I'm gonna stay right here. These are Latinas. These are like, son mis Latinas. I'm not gonna go anywhere. They're not gonna chase me away. So I was like, I'm fine. Eventually somebody's gonna come talk to me. And Melissa, you were like, what are you doing? I was like, nothing. You're like, girl, you need to go talk. And I'm like, I I was like, I'm trying, but I don't know anybody. It is very intimidating to be sometimes, Melissa, we're so used to being the only Latinos in the room that it is very comfortable. But when you start to put us around other Latinas, you're like, holy shit, these are some powerhouse women. And it is intimidating sometimes. And I mean, by the sheer fact that they've worked their asses off to get where they're at, and everybody in there had like whether it was a different title, they were involved in the community for years, they were doing this, not profits, and I was like, holy shit, I am like among like some pretty like heavy hitters. That was pretty cool. And I appreciated the fact that you came up to me. You're like, what are you doing? I was like, nothing. I was like, being here shy, apparently. I don't know.
I saw
That was
you
cool.
and I was
Yeah,
looking at you and you were like frozen.
I
I'm like,
was.
what is this chick doing? And so I feel like I had been I'm a huge networker, and so
Yeah.
that's what I told you when I met you.
Yeah.
I used to do this all the time, work the room, shake
Yeah.
everybody's hand, get everybody's cards. So when I saw you at that event, I was like, "Oh my god, let me go talk to this girl," because you were like frozen. I'm like,
I was. It was a fun night. It was a I didn't know anybody, and I truly I didn't know anybody. I was like,
was that like your first Houston event? Because I've seen
"No."
you now do a lot more.
Yeah, we run in different circles. It was just different circles that I ran in. This was a new one. My and people knew my husband because my husband has like ran in the corporate space all the time, and so they knew him. Except that he know me, and I definitely didn't want to bring him along to be like, "Oh, this is my wife, this is my wife." I wanted to do it on my own. I was like, "I
Mhm.
don't care if it takes me a couple of times to come here to get to know some of them." And eventually I did. Everybody it was like out of nowhere, and like by like 2, 3 weeks, like I was already emailing, texting a couple of people, and I like that, but it because it puts me in a position that I'm uncomfortable in. And like I said earlier, sometimes it's so common for us to be the only Latinos in the room.
Yeah.
That's what I know, and so I can for me, it's like, I'm probably if I do know them, they don't
Yeah.
like, it's fine. I know how to navigate that, but then you put me in a space with a lot of, like, Latinas, and there were a lot of heavy hitters. I was like, "Holy shit." Like, I'm gonna fuck this one up, and I'm trying to, like, not
You know what?
I'm trying to not.
I'm proud of you because although you didn't know where to start or who to talk to first, you stood your ground and you ended up staying there that whole night. And then I know that you made great relationships
I
because I've
did.
seen you
I
um,
did.
past that, and I know that you've been, doing more in the community and getting
Yeah.
involved. So good for you. I'm proud of you for sticking
Thank
around.
you, thank you. That was my first time flying solo like that, and I always do. But like I said, it's always invited like places, and that one was like an open invitation to new members. And I was like, I'm just gonna go. And my husband Juan was like, "Are you want me to go?" And I was like, "No, no, no, no." I was like, "Because all that's gonna happen that night is people you're gonna introduce me, and I don't want it to be like that. I need to fly solo. Like I need to be able to do this on my own." You came and I was like, "Oh, this is pretty fucking cool." This chick was like, "Hey." I was like, "Hey." You're like, "Girl, you gonna stand here in the corner?" I was like, "I'm trying not to."
And
I'm
then
trying not to stand in the corner. I'm trying to get the hell out of here.
I was trying to give you the scoop, the lowdown of
You
who's
did.
who. Yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciated that. But that's what I'm saying. There's this thing among the Latinas that I think some people they think we're maybe they don't. Maybe this is not a narrative that people like adjust to or whatever, but maybe they think we're catty, that we're after each other, and that's not the case. That is not the case for the most part. That is not the case. Whether and that's in every like circles and groups. There's like the few minimal people who kind of like they're rowdy and they're not, but nobody pays attention to that. What they
Yeah.
do pay attention to is the actual connections that you make, the networking, that the places that you show up to because you know you're there for a purpose. You know you're there for the community.
That's something that I learned at Chase, because once I got to Chase, I realized how everybody was so strong in
Yeah.
meetings. Like they would tell you like it is, like no sugarcoating. Like, hey, straight to the point. Like, what is this? What do we need? This is the reality of things. And so when I got to Chase, I was like, oh my god. I need to start using my voice and speaking up. Because I got to Chase wanting to be like well liked, not rock the cradle too much, not ruffle any feathers, right?
Yeah.
Just do your work, be well liked by everybody, don't say anything that could ruffle feathers, but that is not the Chase way, and but in a good way.
Yeah.
Like they make you be productive, and I love it because I've grown so much. But I'm saying this to your story that you're just saying because why are we like that? Like thinking that we're catty and
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
like that we are maybe bitchy or something like that. And so I always like once those thoughts start popping into your head, I always pause myself and say, okay, wait, don't I always admire like strong Latina badasses?
Yeah.
That's what it takes to be a strong Latina badass. So why am I saying that this person is bitchy or
Maybe didn't like me.
or
Yeah.
they're way too strong in personality. It's like, okay, then I take a step back and say, let me not judge them. So
Yeah.
I've learned that these past few years, when I start thinking that somebody's personality might be too strong or something, I'm like, wait, I actually admire that. Let me
Yeah.
rethink how I'm assessing this person. So
Yeah.
that's work. That takes work.
It is a lot of recalibrating to be able to do that. And not for any other matter, but here's the thing that we've been told all our life to be humble, and once we find our voice, it's like we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop talking. We're not going to stop saying things. And even though we continue to find our voice, we're still among the like the lower,
Mhm.
the lowest paid, the lowest whatever. Like we're always, you hear this the facts, the statistics that like we were the first ones to get hit hard during the pandemic. We were the first ones to, and I'm like, we can't be like that anymore. And so I
Yeah.
also try to advocate a little bit. I follow. I am definitely a follower.
Yeah.
If you lead by example, I will I will like fall into place. Like,
Yeah.
and when it's my turn to lead, I'll lead. Like I never, like I've learned to do that.
Yeah.
Like I'm not gonna run in front of like the pack because I want to be first. Like hell no. And I've told people this before in the past that I'm one of those that I want to be part of the team. I don't want to be the star player. I want to be part of. I want to be on the field. I want to play the game because it matters to me. The girls, the little Latinas that are like watching us from the stands, like they're
Yeah.
watching how we're navigating life, and so we have to be part of that. And so yeah, and it was a really good lesson learned for me to at that moment to be like, okay, Angelica, like these are powerhouse Latinas. What do you bring to the table? What do
Yeah.
you bring? Why did you come here? What are you trying to achieve? And I was like, and there was a quick like step where it was like, okay, Angelica, that's right. Usually what I do is I ask questions, right?
Mhm.
Who's that? And who's the one that does it? And who's the one that runs the scholarships? And who's this? And you were quick to just answer. And I was like, holy shit, this is what I mean. This is what I mean. This is the way networking happens to be able to make things happen in your community.
Yeah.
So I think you're a really great example of that to be able to do that, to be able to like advocate for like others and take initiative, to be the first one to say, "Hey, hi, this is us. We're here." On that topic, what was one of the things that you just were like, "Yeah, it's time for me to start speaking up"? Was there a moment, like a switch within you?
Yeah. And it all happened at Chase. I'm telling you, I've been in banking for 17 years. I've been at several institutions and, like I mentioned earlier, credit unions. But when I finally interviewed for this role at Chase, I had to go through like 7 interviews to get the role. And I remember there was this one executive director in California who interviewed me, and he was a Mexican guy. And so he could relate to my story because he was like, tell me about you, your story. And so he could relate. And I had, like I told you earlier, as we've been talking, I was a huge networker. I would work the room and be involved in all these organizations here in Houston. So I was good at speaking and like meeting people and asking questions, right? So I'm good at that. And when I interviewed with him, the executive director, this was like the fourth or fifth interview already. He was like, "Stop that. Like, stop. What are you doing?" And I was like, "What? What do you mean?" He was like, I understand this is your interview and you're trying to put the best version of yourself, but you don't have to be so polished." And
Mhm.
that's what I had always been known for and complimented for, was like being polished and speaking politically correct at work and saying the right things. I had always been complimented to those things, and that's what I always thought would make you advance, is to be well liked, not ruffle feathers, say the right things. And this guy from California here at Chase, he was like, "You're good enough. That's it." He's like, "You're good enough. You've got this far on your own, by your own merit. Like, you're good enough to be here in this company, in this interview. Like, just be you." And literally, he made me cry.
I'm gonna cry now. Jesus.
All it took, he's like, "You're good enough. You're worth it." And so when he did that, I was like, Oh my God. Like, I was already starting to get mind blown at Chase because, I mean, Chase is criticized so much because it's the biggest bank, and, we're industry influencers being
Yeah.
number one. So everybody follows what we do. There's a lot of power in Jamie Dimon and what he does, right? Our CEO, and it's heavily criticized, but there are some excellent people at that bank, and that they've made me grow so much. He was one of them. That's Jonathan Morales. He's out in California, and he was the first one to say, "You're good enough. You're worth it. Like, you don't have to be anything but your authentic self.
Mhm.
Be you." And that is what we want. That is what we want to hire. And from then on, I was like, okay, I stopped being so
Mhm.
polished, and I just started being Mel Melissa, right? I just started being me. And that pattern has continued all throughout Chase in my career with them so far. And so they really empower you to just be you, own your story, do not be scared, or don't be ashamed of your story and your roots, your upbringing. Like, they empower you so much there, well, here at Chase. And so I love that. And so that was the start of that shift in
Mhm.
me. And then once I got to the meetings and started seeing the hard work that I do, is that not everybody believes that there's a racial wealth gap.
Yeah.
Not everybody believes that there's racial inequality, or racial, like, there's so many different things that we come across when we try to talk about equality. And
Mhm.
so the conversations become difficult, and you learn a lot, right? And so as I'm doing this work, I realize that you have to really advocate for yourself, for the work that you want to do, for the community. And that means calling things out how they are, which is hard because people don't like to hear the hard things, and then providing a solution for that. So you have
Oh,
to really make your case. And because of this work, I feel like that's shifted something in me, and it lit a fire in me, and I really wish to share that with others so that
yeah.
you also call things out and say what needs to be done, not only for the community, but like for yourself,
Yeah.
or for your partner, or for your family, whatever. That applies to so many things. But don't be afraid to call things out and say it like it is, and what is it that you need. And so that shift in me started here at Chase, I feel. Because other than that, it's like, I no digas nada, brush it under the rug, don't get involved in any drama. And it's like, if you don't agree, you don't agree, and simply say that. Like I always say, you don't have to be combative, you don't have to be aggressive, you don't have to be rude, but saying your voice, what you think, what you suggest, is so important. It's so valuable.
Yeah. That Oh, Jesus. That hits heavy and that hits home a lot, and especially for Latinas.
Yes.
To just be yourself. You don't have to code switch. It doesn't have to be like that. It's
Yeah,
difficult not to. It's hard not to. And
because we've been taught to do that for so long, and
yeah,
enough. And
sometimes we reinforce that with our kids. We're like, "You're right. You're right. You're absolutely right that we are enough." And
yeah,
I like the fact that I like that call out the issue and also try to come with the solution and
yeah.
advocate for yourself and do all that. I like that a lot, Melissa. Jesus. And who's this person? Who's this man again? Yay, kudos to him. What was his name again?
His name is Jonathan Morales, and he's an executive director for the work that we do, but he's
Yeah.
based out in Cali. So, like, he
Mhm.
manages the whole Cali state. And like I said, there were so many interviews with so many top big wigs at Chase, and he happened to be one of them. He's my
Mhm.
boss's counterpart. And he literally, I was like, the tears were coming down as we continued the interview. And he was just so inspiring, and to validate me and say, like, everything that you've done to this point has got you to this point, and
Yeah.
that is enough. And so I really appreciate that moment and him, like, forever, because it started that change.
Dang.
Oh,
I
yeah.
hope little Latinas, I'm gonna slice and pull this apart, and I want everybody to hear that. I need everybody to hear that you are enough. That no matter where you come from, and you don't have to change your story. You don't have to color it up. You don't have to vibrate. There's no vibrancy. It doesn't have to be like that. Like you're enough. You don't have to hold back on
Yeah.
some of the things in part of your story because it doesn't align with whatever it is that's happening in front of you. That
And that
you know.
happened to me as I
That's
was also like meeting my team, and like all these brilliant people are on the team, and my boss is like asking us questions and like, what do you think about this topic? And everybody's saying like all these amazing answers, and I was like new to the team, and I'm like, oh my god, well, this person's so smart, they have all this great experience. And then my boss is like, but so do you. And like my experience was different, but like just those validation moments, and that's happening here at this company that has made like a change in me. And so that's what I all like as I'm thinking about little Latinas,
yeah,
younger version of me. I'm also thinking about my mom, my
yeah.
sister, my daughters. I like am trying to learn all of this in corporate America so I can teach them, my little cousins. I'm like the oldest in the family, so
Yeah.
I'm thinking about everybody too, and I try to share the message.
Melissa, that's amazing. So, is there anything on here that you would like to talk about your initiative with Chase, or anything that I missed that you would like to incorporate into the interview or into the conversation?
Girl, I don't know. I
We
don't know.
need to do a part two. We need to do like an interview, like in person, because I definitely now I have like a lot more. I
Yeah,
think there's a lot more topics that I'd love to talk to you about. Again, you come from the same neighborhoods as I do, and sometimes when I talk to other people out from like Arizona or Florida or New York, and I'm like I feel like we can, like we're like there's some parts like we're alike, and then some parts we're completely disconnected. And it's hard to be able to relate to people that look like you and kind of sound like you, but there's a disconnect, and somehow people don't understand that, and you're like, yeah, but you're all Latinos. Yeah, we're not all the same though. It's difficult.
it's
And so when I talk to people from like other cities in Texas, like like San Antonio or Dallas, I'm like, oh, yeah, 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 yeah. But you see, here's the Houston area is different. Like the Houston, like the Gulf Coast is different. We're different out there. But
it's true because my team encompasses several states, but like the girls, my counterparts from Brownsville, McAllen, San Antonio, like just people from different parts of Texas, it's different for sure.
okay. Well,
So
no,
we can
I
talk Houston.
we do. We need to do a round two because I said I think you're inspiring, and you're inspiring to the Latinas that I all around like the nation that I want them to listen to, but
Yeah.
also those ones that maybe aren't hearing what resembles them.
I think I wanna close out with just reinforcing the message of knowing your numbers, right? That's very important for us as Latina to get our stuff together so we can make things happen for ourselves. But then also close it out with empowering everybody to get out and vote,
Oh,
because that is so important. And as Latinas, it's hard because most Latinos, there's a huge population that Latinos are religious, right? And whether you're Christian or Catholic or whatever, this whole abortion situation with what's going on in the state and like upcoming elections, that's a hard topic for Latinos because it's
it is.
like you're torn. If you were
We're split.
raised religious, your parents and your family are saying, oh, one thing, but then as a young woman in America wanting rights for your own body, it's like there should be a separation of government and church, right? But I would just say part of that responsibility of being a badass Latina is knowing where your views are, where you
Mhm,
stand, right?
mhm,
Whatever side of the line you're on, whether it's this or that, doesn't matter. Know what you value and act on it and go out and vote. And because we're not going out and voting, and if we really
mhm.
want to make a difference and be that badass, then we're going to go out and vote and tell our circles to go out with us too. So
Yeah.
that's so important.
Nice. Yeah, I like to hear that. So, if you're not registered, go register yourself to vote and then know where what county you're in and where you would go vote if they are like the county. Yeah. There's a lot of information out there for you to be able to educate, but thank you. That is a very good closeout as we're approaching November. As we're approaching November. Yeah. Get your butt out there and register to vote so like that you can vote. And if even if you're like waiting for just even the next election, that's fine, but know and understand that the city policies and state policies directly affect you outside of the government. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, Melissa, thank you for taking the time to talk to me. I definitely want to be cognizant of your time. I know you got a newborn that you got to get back to and a family that you got to take care of. But interview two is coming up because I'm out here already almost like at 50 minutes. But Melissa, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.